Ah, cool.
All right, welcome back to the afternoon session of the second day of the UC Santa Cruz Open Source Symposium. This is a very special session where we actually merged the two tracks. That's coming up. But before the session, it's the buff that Emily Lovell is going to lead. We have a very special guest, Scott Brandt. He is the Associate Vice President for
Research and Innovation
at the Office of the President, so UC system-wide. And he's going to say a few words for this symposium. Scott Brandt is actually a former graduate student, friend. We went back both to CU Boulder, and then he is the guilty one that got me into UC Santa Cruz and joined the research group. I will never forget. It's like, oh, let's show up and see what we're doing, and it should be interesting. And so then, yeah, I got stuck. And so and then later Scott became the Vice Chancellor for Research here at UC Santa Cruz, and now he moved up to UC system-wide position. So Scott Brandt, please. Very glad to have you.
It's true, Carlos. We've been friends for almost 30 years. So yeah, we met in 1994, and then in about 2004, Carlos said he was bored, and I said, hey, we're doing some fun stuff. It's interesting stuff. Why don't you come hang out in the lab? And maybe we can do some cool stuff together. And now, actually, he's here more than I am. So I'm Scott Brandt. I am still a UCSC professor of computer science and now computer science and engineering. I am the Sage Weil Presidential Chair in Open Source Software, which is really cool. I'll explain that. Carlos and I co-advised Sage Weil, who developed the Ceph open source software storage system under our supervision, which was awesome. And then Sage donated $2.5 million after he sold his business back to the university to help us form CROSS and also to set up an endowed chair. So I actually have an endowed chair in my student's name, which is really, really awesome. I really like to brag about that. I'm also UCSC's former Vice Chancellor for Research, and now I'm the UC System-wide Associate Vice President for Research and Innovation. But I'll also tell you, because I'm doing administrative stuff and have been for quite a while, I'm going to step down from the chair and open it up so that it can go to somebody who's actually doing active work in that area. So soon, there will be a new chair in open source software that's actively participating in all of the fantastic stuff that's going on here. So I think actually I'm really happy to have been able to serve in that role, and really happy that it's going to go to somebody who's going to contribute more to the activities that are ongoing. So, and I'll still be able to brag.
You still get invited.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. So, I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say that open source is playing an increasingly important role in society. We all know how important it is. That's why everybody's here today. But companies and universities really need to pay attention. That's why UC Santa Cruz is creating an open source program office. We're really, really happy to be able to tell you all about that. And with programs and tracks to promote the value of open source. It's thanks in part to funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation and the experience and support we've gotten from CROSS. And ultimately, thanks to our experience with Ceph, the Ceph Open Source Distributed Storage System project. That's where we all had some experience with open source, but Ceph really educated all of us in the value of it and what could be done there. We really understand that through our experience with Ceph, and really, honestly, Sage Weil, who showed us how you can be successful in an open source project, even in the business world, the business value of that startup was based on the open source project leadership, the partnerships created with industries in telecommunications, components makers, financial services, and cloud service providers, and the markets that the open source project unlocked for component makers. The value for Ceph for academia is as an industry-grade prototyping platform, a booster for job opportunities for master's and PhD students, a booster for publications related to Ceph, and a booster for industry to engage with UC Santa Cruz. I'll tell you what's really incredible. I go places and I talk to people about Ceph, and they know about Ceph. And then I tell them how I was involved in the project, and people are blown away. I start talking to people sometimes, and I say something about storage systems, and I discover that they know something about storage systems, big data and big storage. And then I mention Ceph, and they get excited. And then I say, I happen to have been involved in that project, and their eyes light up a little bit. And then I say, I know Sage Weil, and they get really excited. And then I say, I was his PhD advisor, and they're completely blown away. And it's really, really cool to have been involved in something really big like that, that people know. It's much more famous, and actually Sage is much more famous than I am, but I like to bask in the reflected glory of that. And it's really fantastic that it's something that we were able to do and give away. And I think that that's a big part of our success with that was that it's something that we gave to the world. And that for me is really exciting. So the goal of the OSPO program is to take that model and expand it to other places. We did it successfully internally in our program. We've done it with a few other projects that we've gotten out there. And now we want to expand that model to other places, other departments, other kinds of projects, and use it as a platform for others to emulate. So we want to amplify UC's research, teaching, and public service via open source practices. That's our goal. And from my perspective, in UC system-wide offices, I want to expand it beyond UCSC. I want to make it a model for the UC system. That's my goal. So we'll start here, and then we'll show everybody everywhere how to do it. So some of the programs that we're working on now are incubator fellowships, and we've had 2 awards. Dr. Oscar Ellick, who's developed or is developing, I'm not sure which it is, ongoing now. Okay, an open source platform for learning and visualizing connectivity patterns in complex data sets using algorithms that are inspired by the foraging behavior of slime molds. And with successful collaborations with UC Santa Cruz Astrophysics and Linguistics. And I guess this was discussed this morning.
Yeah, the workshop.
Very nice. And Dr. Emily Lovell, strengthening underserved segments of the open source pipeline, leveraging outreach efforts at the college and high school level. And you've worked with MIT Lab, Exploratorium, and created and successfully productized Lily Tiny, 2-centimeter programmable e-textile button with a controller for LEDs.
Yep.
That's awesome. I want to see more about that. Okay, and that's what the upcoming BOF is about, right?
So, well, it'll be more about software teaching, but related.
Okay. All right. And another program is the open source research experience, which has achieved GSOC mentor organization status. Receives funding slots for 14 summer students mentored by researchers across 3 UC campuses and 1 national lab, UC Riverside, UC San Diego, Santa Cruz, and Lawrence Berkeley Lab. That's fantastic. Additional sponsors for that are Baskin Engineering's Inclusive Excellence Hub, Toshiba America Electronic Components, and the Citrus Workforce Innovation Program. With a total of 13 successful summer students with 17 primary and secondary mentors from UC and national labs. Okay, and there's posters for those. That's great. And then the annual UC Santa Cruz Open Source Symposium with 120 registrations, 50 in person and 6 sponsors, and sponsorship from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the Linux Foundation, Baskin Engineering's Inclusive Excellence Hub, Cross, IBM Research, and Intel. And then there are new programs starting, including innovative ways to teach open source to undergrads in local communities, including middle schools, high schools, and community colleges that will strengthen underserved segments of the open source pipeline, the Emily's project. And then connecting UC research to wider data science community, Polyfi Polyform, see Oscar's project, Skyhook projects in collaboration with Apache Arrow, Substrate, Cylon, Apache Iceberg, and other open source communities, Asterix DB at UC Riverside, SmartNICs as data processors, Jianshen Lu's HPEC 22 paper, which received an Outstanding Student Paper Award, and HDF5 and proactive data containers at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. Finally, there's some new funding based on Cross and OSPO at UC Santa Cruz, including a 3-year NSF grant for $900,000, Repetto, building a network for practical reproducibility in experimental computer science, and a 1-year NSF POSE Phase 1 grant for $300,000, scoping the ecosystem of Skyhook data management. To convene 4 OSPO workshops to explore sustainable staffing of a support infrastructure for Skyhook data management. Very good. So I just want to say UCSC and the University of California system are deeply proud of Carlos and of Cross and of all that he and his team have accomplished, and extremely excited to see what they will be able to accomplish with the new open source program office. This is a really, really fantastic development. I feel like it's sort of a graduation from Cross to the open source program office. It's taken it to the next level. And we see, as I said before, we see the OSPO as a model for the UC system and beyond. This is one step up from Cross. Going to the UC system would be the next step. And it's really a model for universities everywhere. And we will see what comes next. So that's what I think about it. It's really fantastic stuff. I think that there are huge opportunities for open source well beyond the university. I'll just mention, I've already used up my time, but I'm gonna say one more thing. I've been working with state agencies a lot on some very large system-wide projects in the Office of the President. One is we recently got $185 million from the state to work on climate change. And one of the projects we discussed with them was climate data integration. It's a huge problem. There's a tremendous amount of climate data available and nobody knows what to do with it. We've got temperature data, we've got rainfall data, we've got fire data, we've got groundwater data, we've got health data, we've got all of these various sources of climate data that could paint an integrated picture of what's going on and how it's affecting California communities. But it's not integrated in any one place where people could be using it to make important decisions about how to allocate state resources most effectively to deal with climate change and protect our communities, and to decide what climate change mitigation efforts are most effective. That's what they want to know. Our state legislators want to know what things that we are currently doing are the most effective uses of our state resources. When we do something, what's working and what's not working, and how are we most effectively protecting our communities right now from the effects of climate change? They don't really know. They pour a lot of money into these various mitigation efforts, and they don't know which ones are working effectively because there's just too much data, actually. It's not well integrated. It's not integrated in a fashion that they can understand. So they have to trust certain people to tell them, and that's not always effective. Somebody needs to address that problem. It's an ideal open source problem because there are lots and lots of different people collecting data. It's all out there. there's no way that we're going to put it all in one big repository because there's just too much of it. Somebody needs to develop an interface, an open source interface that everybody can, this sounds like a World Wide Web kind of a problem, but it's specifically this kind of data that everybody can hook into and then store their data in some sort of unified fashion so that we can all access it. And then you need modules, open source modules for analyzing that kind of data in some sort of unified way. There's money out there for it. We were talking about tens of millions of dollars from the state that they're ready to cough up right now if somebody was working on this problem. So there's lots of money out there. Lots of people desperate for it. I hear it every time I talk to state agencies about climate change. Somebody needs to solve this problem. But there's no one person that's going to do it. This is an ideal open source problem. Anyways, that's enough. So thank you all. This is a great. I'm really excited about the OSCO going forward. Science, there's so many good problems out there. We need solutions.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Thank you so much.